Have you ever felt like no matter how much you achieve, you are still fighting to prove yourself in the workplace? Like you're in constant survival mode just to make it in a workplace that never values your hard work. I'm Dr. Khalil Hussein. I'm a double board certified trauma surgeon, mom of six, and the founder of Defiance Academy, where I teach marginalized professionals, especially women, how to balance their faith, family, and career without burning themselves out in the process. So, why, with all the things that are already on my plate, did I have to create Defiance Academy? And I say have to because it came out of pure necessity. So, surgery residency is difficult as is. It's 5 years of training to take care of really sick patients. And for me, it was especially challenging because I'm a Black hijabi woman who valued having a family. So residency was very challenging, having to deal with hijab discrimination, sexism, Islamophobia, and all those things. But one of the biggest challenges I faced was motherhood, having children while training to be a surgeon. And so my first child, I was pregnant during my intern year, my very first year as a resident. And the biggest problem was that the program didn't have a maternity leave policy. So it was never heard of, right? Nobody, goes through a surgery residency and has children and finishes the program. I was told as much. So I went through that struggle. I helped create a maternity leave policy. I had all my children while in training. And so I figured, I paid my dues. I proved myself. Now I've graduated. I got a job. And by this time, I had all my children, alhamdulillah. And so at this time, I'm an attending. I'm a double board certified trauma surgeon. And so I start my first year in practice. And this is where, all the things about work hard, prove yourself, and everything works out fell apart for me. So my first year as an attending, I am responsible for taking care of all the trauma patients in the ICU on the floor. And when I would round on my patients and I would make decisions and I would write orders, my orders would be canceled, right? My plans would be questioned, right, by nursing staff. They would call my colleagues and they would change my orders. And they say, Dr. Hussein ordered this. We don't agree. So they would change my plans. I would operate on a patient, someone who comes in bleeding to death, and I would do an emergency surgery. And my colleagues would question, oh, who did the surgery? You did the surgery? Right? As if, I am qualified to do the job. And so I would experience this over and over and over. And for the first 6 months of my practice, I was written up almost every day. Every single day I was on call, I would be written up for all kinds of things. If I asked a question, right? If a trauma patient came in and they were, they fell or they were shot or they were in a car accident, I would ask, what happened? I would ask specific questions about the trauma, and I would get written up of how dare you question us almost. And so at this time, it became really challenging, constantly fighting in the workplace just to do my job. And the worst case was it was in the middle of the night and I had a patient who came in after a car accident bleeding to death. And so in those situations, we need emergently give blood, place IV lines, give blood transfusions right away. So I'm instructing the nursing staff to take all these steps. And I get, silent treatment. Nobody responds to anything that I say. They're moving very, very slow while this patient is dying. The blood pressure goes down to the 50s. It's supposed to be 120. Their blood pressure is in the 50s, right? If they get any worse, their heart will stop. And so I'm repeating myself over and over and over. We have to start. We have to give blood. We have to do this. We have to do that. So finally, I have the charge nurse respond to me and say, "We'll get to it, okay?" That's the response I get. And so finally, I kind of, double down and say, "No, stop what you're doing. This is what we need to do. Give blood. We stabilize the patient." And then I get written up, right? And so it was this perpetual cycle of no matter what I did, no matter, if I taught, if I educated and explained this is why we do these things, if I was nice, nothing helped, right? I could not do my job. It wasn't enough for me to have all these board certifications. I could not do my job, right? Because people never saw me as a leader and wouldn't respect me as a leader. And in addition to being a mom and having to go home and cook and clean and this and that, I was getting burned out, right? I couldn't do my job. I was struggling to, be present with my children because I had all these workplace challenges I was dealing with. And so I sought out help. I sought help and went to a women in medicine conference in Chicago. And so in going there, I said, okay, these are my challenges that I'm facing. Residency was tough. I did my work. I proved myself. I graduated. I got my board certifications. Now I'm here. I can't even do my job. Right. And so this conference was a diversity, equity, and inclusion conference. Okay. And they talked about everything. So the keynote speech was on gap in leadership, gap in salary, gap in research funding, gap in grants awarded, and gap in awards, right? And so these were the major things that concerned women at the very top of the academic career ladder. And so the Q&A session came and I got up and said, okay, I have a question. Great talk, wonderful topics. But me, as being early in my career, it was by this time I was halfway through I was at the end of my first year. And I said, okay, great topic. I'm at the bottom of the ladder. I just started my practice as an attending physician. Residency, I went through all of these things. I understand residency is difficult, but I'm still facing the same things in my practice. I cannot, I can't do my job. I can't take care of my patients. It's impacting my patient care. And so how do I deal with this? It's really difficult to tell if it's racism, if it's sexism, if it's Islamophobia. It's really difficult to tell. And so she ended the Q&A session and she said, that's a very good question. That's tough, but it's a very good question. We're done. And so I said, okay. I went to her afterwards. I found her and I said, I'm really curious. This is really challenging. What do I do? How do I pursue? How do I deal with the fact that I'm burning out from this and the fact that I can't get my job done in the workplace? And so she looked me dead in the eye and she said, I don't do race. And she walked away. I was flabbergasted, floored, however you want to describe it. It was shocking to me. And he said, what do you mean you don't do race? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. The whole thing was founded based on the fact that we have inequity in the workplace, right? What do you mean you don't do race? And so a lot of women, a lot of marginalized women in the conference came to me and asked me, we saw you talking to her. What did she say? And I told them exactly what she said, and they were flabbergasted as well. I'm over here in a Women in Medicine conference in a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, right? Where we're supposed to be discussing the challenges that we face in the workplace, right? And the keynote speaker just tells me she doesn't do race. I'm pretty good at controlling my emotions, but I have never been more frustrated in my entire life at a conference. I mean, I paid money. I paid really good money to be there, to take time off from work, to take time off, away from my kids. And I came here to a conference where the keynote speaker says she doesn't do race. It was that moment that I had to wake up and say, you know what? I am not going to find the answers that I need in these kinds of conferences. Because the reality is, a lot of the people who do diversity, equity, and inclusion leadership training don't necessarily come from our backgrounds and don't necessarily understand the challenges that we face. The cultural differences between our communities and being in the workplace, having to code switch, having to change who we are just to fit in the workplace. They don't understand the fact that we value having a family and we need workplace flexibility and we need support, and that, prioritizing that automatically makes you less serious about your career. They don't understand that these values are extremely important to us and that it doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that, we want a career as well, right? I remember as a surgery resident choosing to have children, I was told that I no longer prioritized being a surgeon just because I chose motherhood. And they don't understand the fact that we are navigating toxic and hostile workplaces, that there are a lot of unspoken things, right? The racism, the sexism, the Islamophobia, that is not addressed openly, right? We talk a lot about implicit bias and a lot of other safe things, but we don't talk about the real problem of blatant racism, blatant sexism, blatant Islamophobia, right? And so that's exactly why I created Defiance Academy. I created Defiance Academy for us to talk about these real issues, to discuss and strategize around these real issues, to no longer hide who we are just to survive in a workplace that wasn't designed for us. I created Defiance Academy for us to be who we are in the workplace, to continue to prioritize our values, our faith, our family, as well as our careers without burning ourselves out in the process. And so on this channel, that is what we'll discuss. On this channel, I will show you how to recognize what's really causing you to burn out. It's beyond just, managing your time and doing self-care. It goes way beyond that. And I'm going to show you how to redefine success on your terms. What does success look like for you from your own values and not by a system that doesn't value you? So if you're done being in constant survival mode and you are ready to create the life and career you want on your own terms, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, and join me every week as we break down the myths that are keeping you stuck and learn strategies to take back control of your life and career. You don't have to shrink yourself. You don't have to change who you are in order to achieve success. You just have to redefine what success means to you and learn to take up space. If this message resonates with you, then click on the next video to learn why burnout creeps into your life without you even knowing about it.